and I have been a general chemistry and organic chemistry instructor for the Princeton Review for a little bit over a year now. So just a little bit of a background about me. I graduated from UCLA in summer 2013, majored in chemistry, and I took my MCAT in January 2014 and started teaching about March 2014. So it's been a little over a year. I took the MCAT when they called it the golden years of the MCAT. Reason being because it was only a 3.5-hour test and there was no writing section. So for only 2013 and 2014, they eliminated the writing section, which made it the shortest MCAT, I think, in history. Yeah. Usually it was like a 7-hour test, 8-hour test. But of course, those days are gone, right? That ended in January, so now it's a 7.5-hour test. But it's not all bad, especially if you guys are, because most pre-meds are good in biology, better in biology than other subjects. So if biology is your strong suit, it's actually a better test. Right? So we'll just go over a couple things that Keisha might have skipped in the slides, but that we'll have some time to go over. So mainly, what's really important is that it's a passage-based test, so you have to get good at doing passages. So 75 to 80% of the questions. So 75 to 80% of the questions are based on a passage, and only about a quarter are freestanding, right? So what that means is, it's a special skill to be able to do well on these passage-based questions. So the more you practice it, the better you're going to get at it, right? So 4 sections. They added that psychology and social biological foundations of behavior. Okay, so just to sort of, highlight, what basically the MCAT breaks down to. So you've got your biological and biochemical foundations, which is basically the biology section of the test. So yeah, it's 65% bio, 25% biochem, and 10% general chem and organic chemistry. So it's kind of funny how they only have 5% of each, and what that translates to, right? So you've got 59 questions in this section. So that means you've got about 2 to 3 questions in general chemistry, 2 to 3 questions in organic chemistry, and the rest in biology/biochemistry. So how many of you guys have taken a biochem class? Like any type of biochem class? So did you guys find it was more biology based or chemistry based? Really? Okay, so in my experience, biochemistry is, I'd say, like 70% bio, 30% chem. Well, at least the structure of biochemistry is not the same as organic chemistry. It sounds really similar, but the thinking process is more, in my opinion, towards biology. So this is something they added on. If you haven't taken a biochem class, you can still do well in that section, but of course it's recommended. But in reality, this section, I would say, is 90% biology based, and then they scatter in a couple questions in general and organic chemistry that relate back to biology, right? Then you've got your brand new section, which is 95% psych and soc. Then they also include a little bio because, as Keisha said, they're trying to make the whole test, relevant to biology, right? Which makes sense. Typical, verbal section, they just renamed it. And so this is the section that I teach, basically. You've got your chemical and physical foundations, which is really just another name for the chemical and physical sciences. So before, on the old test, they had 50% GChem, 50% physics, but now they've reduced the general chemistry content to 30%. They reduced the organic chemistry content to 15%, but they replaced it with biochemistry. So you've got 25% biochem in the biological foundations section and 25% in the chemical and physical. So it's a really important topic, right? Biochem is definitely going to show up a lot on this new MCAT. So basically what they did was they reduced the GChem content, the organic chemistry content, and the physics content, right? This used to be 50%, now it's a quarter, to make up for biochem, right? So basically they reduced all the other stuff to make something more biologically relevant, right? Okay, so let's see what time we have.
We have about 1 hour. So.
An hour? Okay, a lot of time.
Oh, yes.
So yeah, we're gonna basically before we end class today, we're gonna do a passage. We'll give you guys some time to go over it, and then the way we're gonna review it is the way that I review it in the review course that I teach for Princeton Review. Right. So what I actually focus on is the test taking strategies. Right. So the way the course is split is we'll do about 2 to 2.5 hours of content review, and then about 30 minutes to an hour of passage review and strategies to do well on the passages, right? Because the MCAT is a reasoning test, right? It's not a memorization test, so if you go into it trying to memorize things, it's not going to end well. So it is a reasoning test, but there are effective strategies that you can use to eliminate answer choices in the passage, right? So the technique that we're going to use over and over again in pretty much any review course, but especially Princeton Review, is a process of elimination, right? So there's 4 answer choices per question, and you always want to be eliminating it to at least 50% of the answer choices you can eliminate, right? Because if you can get rid of 2 of 4 answer choices, then you have basically a coin flip whether you'll get it right or wrong, which is a lot better than a 25% chance, right? So when we do the passage, we'll go over some strategies on how to basically narrow down answer choices so that you have a better likelihood of getting it right. Before we do the passage, just a couple points. When you guys do your studying for the MCAT, you guys are going to develop your own strategy. So keep that in mind. We do have sort of a preset strategy, but if it doesn't work for you, don't feel bad, because you're going to develop your own way to study and your own strategy for getting through these passages, through the sections. But of course, you always want to do the easy passages first and the hard passages later, because it's a time test, right? So it's a very common, especially on the old test, because the old test was more of a crunch for time than this new test. But on any time test, a lot of students will make the mistake of they'll read the very first passage, right? And the first passage, not by coincidence, will be the hardest, right? Because they have to have a curved test. So students will read the first passage and want to solve it because it's in that order, but it'll take 15 to 20 minutes to solve them, and before they know it, half the test is gone based on one passage. That's what you want to avoid, right? You do not have to take this test in order, and most of the time you're going to be skipping around sections, because when you the test is computerized, so whenever you click next or whenever you skip around, it doesn't take time away. It pauses the time for an instant and then resumes it. So when you do your test and when you do the passages, right? Let's say you're doing a series of passages, read the first paragraph, and if it makes no sense, you got to go to another passage, right? If it makes some sense, continue on. But let's say that the passage is on electromagnetism, and that was something that you really did not understand in college, then you probably want to skip that passage because it's going to take a long time, right? And the more time that passage takes, the less time you have for other passages, and every question is worth an equal amount, right? So that's the main strategy, of course, is pick the easy passages or the easy questions first and get them right, and then spend the remaining time on the hard questions. Another strategy is, as we said, it's about 75 to 80% passage-based questions, 20 to 25% freestanding. So another strategy that some students employ is doing the freestanding questions first and then the passage-based questions. So that one really all depends on how comfortable you are with passages. If you're super comfortable with doing passages, you might want to do the passages first and then the freestanding, but most students have a difficult time with passages because it's way harder to see something brand new and synthesize it from what you know than just memory recall. So freestanding passages are basically memory recall. It's what do you remember from your science courses, from your humanities courses, right? So that's a strategy too. Do the freestanding passages first and then the passage-based questions, because once again, every question is worth an equal amount, right? Let me just make sure that I didn't miss anything important. Yeah, so this is really important. pure memorization is not going to work. I mean, you could get lucky and get a couple questions right just from, it's always, the more you know, the better, but a more effective use of your time is to realize this is a reasoning test. And how you prepare for a reasoning test is do lots of practice problems and start to see the types of questions they ask, right? So